Jesus is not the only way. I know that may cause me to get a lot of flack and maybe lose some friends and some supporters, followers, subscribers, wherever this video is going to be seen and felt. But I think that is the purpose of, me saying that, is to stop hiding from who I am, from who I really am, and to just allow who I am to shine through. I think people that know me anyway know that I know that that's not the only way, based on me, my talk about angels and a bunch of other stuff. But, and I was going to say this last weekend, and literally was going to, that was going to be my post. But I chickened out because, the same old fears that be coming up, same old trauma and drama that comes up, fear of rejection and abandonment and the usual suspects, I guess, the things that I'm working on healing. And so I've been working really hard on getting over that, this worthiness issue that I have, and really not getting over it. That's not the right thing to say. Accepting that, just kind of surrendering and giving in to the shame of where I am in my life or whatever. So I've been, practicing a lot of tools, still been in therapy, doing a lot of stuff. I'm just tired. I'm tired of this thinking mindset that I've been having. I'm tired of my life being full of lack. And I am just so ready for more. And so part of that allowance and receptivity for more is me letting go. I've been working a lot on letting go of shame, letting go of doubt, self-doubt, letting go of definitely lack. And I've really been wanting to allow in this abundance and money. Let's just call it money. For a long time, I never used to have to worry about money. I mean, even when I had a reason to worry about money, when I was in the brokest I can ever remember being was in college, other than now. Well, let me just change my wordage. I was definitely broke though in college. Now I like to call it, I got a whole lot of little money. But then at the same time, I got what I need. I always I trust and believe that God will always provide. That's always kind of been a mantra and I guess a belief of mine, a knowing that the Lord always provides, no matter what, And and that has definitely proven to be the case. But the quote-unquote brokest I've ever been was when I was in college. And even then, I didn't even really know that I was broke. I had, I had enough money to party. Back then, that was when Blunts and the album The Chronic and all of that was out. So all of that, I had enough money to party and smoke. And then when I started smoking cigarettes, I had enough money to get my squares. What was we doing back then? Donating plasma to get you get you some Coke 45, some OD, some Brass Monkeys, well, actually Brass Monkey was a little bit pricey, but you know what I'm saying. I literally didn't realize that I was broke. We just kind of did what we did. I had a car. Matter of fact, I was the only one out of my crew that had a car, the little gray Ghost, and 5-speed. And so I had enough money, and then I was working as a CNA part-time, PRN, which means as needed, at the local hospital in Frankfurt. And I had just enough. I think I may work once every 2 weeks. Once every 2 weeks or so. And I had just enough money to put gas in my tank, but not too much money to where I wasn't able to get assistance from the government. Back then, I've stayed in Section 8 apartments off campus, not the ones right across the street, honey. That was the get over there. But I stayed over there with the elderly and whatever. My rent was $30 a month, which was actually high compared to a couple other students that was over there. Because I had a job, they charged me rent. Other people didn't even have no rent. But my point is, I didn't really have money issues as an adult. Once I graduated college, I was out of my mama's pocket. I became a registered nurse. I was making steady income. And I was good. And, I didn't have to look at money. I didn't have to, I could buy whatever I wanted. I didn't really go. I mean, I left the country twice. Went to Cancun twice. But I was, if I wanted to go somewhere else, I could have. But, I didn't, I was young. Like I said, used my money for partying and buying clothes. But one thing I do remember is I wasn't happy. I still wasn't happy. I was in an abusive relationship right out of college. I was in an abusive relationship, moved in with this dude. I thought I was going to be able to escape him after college, but I moved in with this dude. And anyway, I'm making baked pizza spaghetti. And now it's time for the ground chicken. That was Italian sausage. And anyway, I moved in with this dude. Even though I knew not to, but I thought things would get better. Plus, I think he told me he was on track to try to play football. Said that he was Terrell Owens' roommate. Anybody that's watching this that knows me knows who I'm talking about. I'm not going to name him. But anywho, so I stayed with him even after there was, abuse. Number one, because I just didn't know my worth. And number two, because I thought he was going to be making a whole lot of money. So I pretty much sacrificed myself and abandoned and betrayed myself for that. And we all do it. But anyway, that relationship lasted for probably, I don't know, lasted probably almost 2 years. And then he proceeded to stalk me for 3 years after that, which is really crazy. Really, really crazy. But it was always just kind of like a series of bad relationships, one after the other. And because I just didn't know my worth, Daddy wasn't around. He was either on drugs or locked out, on drugs or locked up. And so I was, the single mother statistic. Anywho, my point is there's a lot of stuff that affected my self-worth, and I just didn't really know what I didn't know. And a lot of times we just don't realize how our upbringing, do I want to do this whole box? How our upbringing can really affect our self-esteem, and which plays into our adulthood, follows us around in adulthood. And I wasn't happy, but I really wasn't happy, even though, I was able to buy what I wanted and go where I wanted, and, but I still was kind of looking for love in all the wrong places, and, sought that in the attention of men. Now, when I was with somebody, I was with somebody. I'm devoted. But when I wasn't, I kind of felt like my responsibility was to myself. So that led me to being in relationships where they, let's see if I can bring this over here. Being in relationships to where I'm like the side chick. Sometimes I knew about it. Well, I'll take that back. Yeah, a lot of, the long-term relationships that I were in, there was only one long-term relationship that I know for a fact that he was just a cheater throughout the whole time. But for the most part, that really wasn't our issue. The issue was always the respect. It was either emotional abuse or physical abuse would be the issue within the relationships that I had. But when I wasn't in a relationship, I found that I was always kind of seeking that love and attention that I guess I didn't get from my daddy in relationships. And then, I started having sex really early. Pretty much the first time I was ever with that abusive guy, you might as well say he raped me. Well, he did. I didn't, there was a lot of tussling and fighting going on, and he just pretty much took it. And I kind of felt like anytime you're with a guy, you're obligated to have sex with them in order to be in a relationship with them. And anyway, at some point when I decided I wanted to, when I started realizing that, you know, for a few years the partying and the hanging out and all of that was just really not enough, I started wanting more. I really started wanting more. And I started, I didn't know what that was, but well, now what I know what it is that I wanted more of a connection with God. Now my spiritual upbringing, like a lot of black people, you know, I have a background that's rooted in as a Baptist, but I guess by the time I came along, my mama was sick and tired of some church, because my granny did church, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And so my mother, who had me when she was 20, I wasn't necessarily raised in church per se. And so, and I now know that that's a good thing. I wasn't raised in church, but I would go to church, and so I knew how it worked and all of that. But I just was a very inquisitive child when it comes to it. But church, you know, can be very elitist, and well, we know what church and religion can do. We already know. And so, but anyway, I remember distinctively some of my ideas about what, you know, I was always kind of like the new kid everywhere I went, because my mother was a single parent, and, you know, we went from, you know, from Frankfurt to Lexington with my granny, living with her, to back to Frankfurt. I lived in Virginia for a very short period of time when I was like 1 to 2, somewhere around in there. And so my mother, who was also, bless her heart, in survival mode, did what she had to do. And but that didn't really give me a lot of stability, and now I know safety and security. And so I didn't like, you know, I used to envy being, you know, I've always been, because I'm a single child and only child, I always kind of considered my friends and everything like my sisters and family. And so I used to envy like kids that grew up in one neighborhood. Like, you went to the same elementary school on through high school, middle school, and high school. You lived in that same neighborhood your whole childhood. I always used to envy that, because it's like everybody usually always knew each other, and I just always kind of felt like the new kid anytime I would go to a new school or whatever. And then, you know, and that always kind of created a lot of bullying. There was, you know, I got bullied a lot. Bullied, sexually harassed by kids. You know, and this quote unquote pretty light skin privilege that I have. You know, we talk a lot about colorism and what dark skin girls had to go through, but there's a level of trauma that I experienced as a light skinned cute girl, People used to make up stuff about me all the time. You know, that's why I always grew up to be friendly. It's like I didn't know how to fight, but I, was always very friendly. I tried to be friendly, tried to get along with everybody. But the little girls would make up stuff about me, and I heard your cousin was, you was talking about my mama. Heard your cousin was blah blah, and so they wanted to do anything to try to fight you or whatever. So I kind of learned to be friendly and to be definitely a people pleaser. I learned to hone my my skills in conflict resolution, and trying to get everybody to get along, and all of that. Those skills that I still use today, and but for the purpose really of survival. I mean, that's how I learned how to survive. And so, but anyway, back to, I wasn't really happy when I was living, when I was what I would call I was balling. I had all this money, and I still felt like something was missing, and again, what you now realize was a connection with spirit, with God. And a friend of mine at the time, me and her were the last two that didn't have any, out of our crew, that didn't have any kids and didn't have any, wasn't married or anything. And I always kind of admired her because I felt like she was more, I guess, woman of the world is what I would say. And she had lived in Atlanta before, and she, at this point, she had lived there at this point. And so I was not happy. I was fraternizing with somebody's man. They weren't married, but you might as well say they was. But I had then found myself in this relationship with this dude who, it took me a long time to get over him, mainly because he was so good in the bedroom. Having a flashback, but because good sex will make you feel like you're in love. Let me tell you. But anywho, he just really knew how to please a woman. I'll just say that. But I finally decided I got to get away from this dude because, if I don't change, ain't nothing gonna change. And so it was an opportunity to get out of Lexington, the small town, and move to hot Atlanta. And here I had all of these ideas about what that meant and who was going to be there. And a lot of it had to do with me, again, searching for a man, looking for a man, thinking that this, going to Atlanta where it's the black urban, the buppies, the black urban professional, the black urban professionals were going to be there, the buppies. And even just getting down there was a lot of trauma and drama around that. I remember being so scared to move. I was so scared to get up out of there, to get out of Lexington. But then still knowing in my heart that this is exactly what I need to do. Like, I got to do this. There's nothing here for me. I'm squandering my life and my pretty away with this no who doesn't really give a shit about me, and looking for more. But so I made it down there. I'm so glad that it I grew up in Atlanta. I always like to say that I grew up in Atlanta, but I remember that I almost didn't even get there because me and this now ex-friend of mine who kind of encouraged me to come down there. I don't know. She treated me like I was some little redheaded stepchild, just trying to get down there and trying to get a job, and the whole, I didn't know how to read a map. This is way before, back then when there was no. I think Garmin might have came out like in the like what do you call it, I don't even know what they call that thing now. But anyway, I didn't know anything. I'm just, was depending on my friend to kind of help me navigate the ways and everything. And it just almost didn't happen because the 2 weeks that I was down there to try to, figure things out, how to, working on my resume. Like, I didn't have a computer. Computers were still new. I moved to Atlanta in 2005. So computers were still like very expensive and I just didn't know what I didn't know. And so I needed a lot of help. I needed a lot of help. And I just did not get the support that I thought I was going to get, that she kind of said that she was going to give me. And instead, oh, sorry, I moved this back over there. And instead, like I said, at one point, I ended up having to go stay with another friend for the last, I guess, week or so that I was there, because things just had become so tense between the two of us. And we pretty much fell out. And so, but by that time I was like determined, I'm not going to allow anybody to stop me. I know I need to get out of Lexington, and this is what I want to do. And so yeah, so I ended up moving to Atlanta. I think me and this girl ended up reconnecting once I got there. Maybe a few weeks afterwards, we kind of repaired our on again, off again friendship. And then life went on. At some point, I don't know, it was a few months that I was there, and we ended up falling out again. That was kind of like the pattern, I guess. And I've noticed that in certain relationships, like I have like attracted people that, like, I don't know, are just fucking jealous, hating ass people that don't want to see you win. I'm not saying I'm perfect or I was a perfect friend or whatever, but for the most part, there was always some tension or something where, I'm always in relationships where it's like I got to prove my worth and prove what a good friend I am. And somebody's trying to call me, baby. Anywho, trying to prove my worth. There was always somewhere I was trying to prove my worth and prove what kind of friend I am and prove what kind of girlfriend I was, or prove what kind of wife I am, and I just didn't make. I just need to make the best choices, people. But that's all good. I had to learn. And eventually, again, we fell out. Ultimately, had to do with some dude that wasn't her man, but that was kind of like the catalyst. And we didn't speak for probably for about 3 years after that. And so now I'm in this city where I don't know who. I don't have a network of people. I don't have anybody to kind of like. I don't have a network of people. I'm in this new city. I had to learn how to read a map. I had to learn these are things that I needed to do anyway. Had to learn how to read a map. Had to learn how to, get around town and network and make new friends and just learn how to be me, I guess. And then excuse me, baby. The loneliness set in. I did make a really good friend at my job. We're still really good friends to this day. Thank God for the really good friends that I've made in the different cities that I've lived in. Thank God for some of the friends that I still have that really, even though we may not talk every day, they still love and appreciate me for who I am. Thank God for the new people that I had to have come into my life, and for the people that ride out for me online that I ain't never even met, that still love me. I mean, I know it's easier to love somebody when you ain't from afar, when you ain't never lived with them or whatever. But you know what? I kind of learned. I used to be like, dang, these people love me. Why come the people that you expect to love you the way you want them to love you don't love you? And then I realized, you know what? Damn that. Love who love you. Let people love who love you. But I started seeking again, started having this seeking, and then when I met my son's father, that was like I guess it had been like 3 years. It's like literally like I've been there for about 3 years. Let me see. 8, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, I'd been there for about 3 years. And there was a lot of culture shock that I had gotten. Once I got to Atlanta, I realized that it really wasn't what I thought it was. I, was very disillusioned by how many gay people there were. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but it to me seemed like the Black San Francisco. And so the black people in our, gayness in the black community is not as open as it is in the white community. So there's a lot of down low. That book that had just came out too, the Down Low was out, and there was a lot of fear that I had that was kind of built around dating and stuff now. So that was that. And then here I am without no friend, and here I am. Well, I had one, like I said, me and this one friend had got together, and then here I am just still searching and seeking and realizing that, moving necessarily didn't, I guess, solve my problem, because one thing I've learned is that whatever problems you do have, no matter where you go, you gonna take you with you. And so the problem isn't, the lack of the money, the lack of the man, the lack of the clothes, or losing weight or gaining weight, or any of the superficial stuff that we think it is. It's really about having a connection with spirit, God, Jesus, Buddha, Hare Krishna. I don't care. And so this leads me back to full circle about why I say Jesus is not the only way, because I don't think I'm going to have enough time to get all this done before he gets to work. My child got a job. Praise God for that. But I started feeling more and more like I had gotten into some risky situations before my son's father. There were like, what do you call it? Signs that I kind of wasn't really on the right path. But, and I've always felt like supported. Okay, what am I doing? Where am I going? What am I doing? Where am I going? I've always felt like supported by spirit, my guidance, but just never really paid attention and wasn't listening. And so, when I met my son's father, I was in a really, really kind of low place of loneliness and desperation and, self-esteem. And I just, and going back to when I decided that I wanted to move to Atlanta and the fear, I remember my very first, in order to help me with that, I remember my very first self-help personal development book was called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. I can't think of the author's name at this point right now. And I remember, my mother, us having a conversation. I don't know, me, her, and my Aunt Paula. I think we were on our yearly trek to go look at the fall foliage. I think I remember that's what we were doing. We were looking at fall foliage and stuff. And I just, this idea about me moving, it was hard for my mother as well, because we kind of grew up together. We did grow up together, and so I had grown into my womanhood, and we had a relationship where we would like date each other. We would go out to eat, and we love us a veranda, eating out on the patios and stuff like that. So it was, she was losing her baby. And so it was a rough time it was kind of rough. But I remember in the car us having a conversation about my fears, and she couldn't understand, like what my problem was, essentially. I'm having a hot flash. She could not understand what my problem was. And it's like, I'm not happy. I'm just not happy. And I need to get away from this dude. I want more in my life. And that's usually how it starts. It's like, you don't really know, a lot of times we don't really even know what it is that we want. But we know we want more, and we know we sick and tired of this terrible job. That was the other thing. I was in the soul-sucking nursing gig that there was mean girls there. That's like the ultimate mean girl job. There were mean girls there. I was always feeling like I wasn't good enough there. You know, I had time management issues there. It was always something. I just couldn't get right. And so she couldn't understand what the problem was. Well, you got this good career and you're so pretty and you could have, she didn't say this, but that's usually kind of like the thing I would hear when I would have this, when I would tell people about me wanting to move and get out of Lexington. Well, why? You got this great career. You're so pretty. And then couldn't nobody understand why I didn't have no man. At least not nobody that I could call my own. And you're so pretty and you got this great career. Like, what is the problem? It's like, I don't know, but that ain't enough. Being cute with a great career ain't shit if you're not happy. Okay? And I had a man, and he was abusive. And I had somebody else's man, and he didn't care about me. And so everything I was doing wasn't right. I wasn't fulfilled. I wasn't going to church. Well, I did go to church. Okay, let's go back to that. So when I was 21, at some point, I did decide that I wanted to be baptized and saved. So technically, I should be good. I'd have been dipped in the water. I got up and went down and accept Jesus Christ as my personal Savior. I did all of that. Now, I did it. It was kind of like an obligatory thing. No, well, let me see. I felt like, I was at the church, and at this point, I was semi-regular when I would come home. I even had a nice little stint in the choir for a while there. And so I felt like using, who are these people? Simple Truth Organic Tomato Basil. They got a new, anywho. Trying to show y'all what I'm doing too. There was a semi. I don't know what I was gonna say. Basically, I got baptized and did what I thought I was supposed to do. Oh, that's what it was. I felt like I was there when I was at the church. And, when you're listening to the music, the gospel music, you get moved by and everything. And then I felt like something say, get up there. Now's the time. Get up there and go and get baptized. Now, before this, I think I was messing around with this dude who... I'm trying to decide on if I'm going to even be descriptive. What do you think, God? Okay. I'll just say I was messing around with this guy in college that kind of kept me hidden. I was kind of like the Jezebel or whatever. And so, like I was cool enough to hang out with and bump and grind with and all of this and all of that, but like to be his woman outwardly and openly, that was not happening. And so I don't know if that also had something to do with it, where I felt like, I don't know, there was a mixture of, okay, there's this feeling, I'm feeling all filled up, and like this must be the spirit mixed in with, I'm afraid if I don't do this now, I'm gonna go to hell. You know, that whole thing. I don't want to go to hell. The indoctrination that I learned is, if you don't accept Jesus Christ as your personal Savior, you're gonna go straight to hell. And so I very much believe that, even though I kind of questioned it. I remember questioning, even as an elementary kid, the pastor asking about the whole dying on the cross for your sins. That idea. I'm like, I don't get it. Explain to me, like, break that down for me. I remember asking that. What does it mean he died on the cross for your sins? I was just a very inquisitive kid. I'm still very inquisitive. My mother used to always say also, you know, you can't say everything that you think. And I've just always asked a lot of questions. And something in me then just kind of felt like that wasn't right. That only people that except him are the only ones that's going to heaven. I don't know about that. And I think because I wasn't raised in church, I thank God that it gave me my own perspective on what God is to me and what that means for me and religion, and how that has sort of played a part in one of the reasons why I finally decided to, I don't know if I left the church per se as much as I just kind of, you know, I just stopped going to church. I didn't really enjoy church anyway. I enjoyed the music, but all of that pomp and circumstance, and then they start what they start rearing up and doing all, and then back then anyway, I didn't really understand or wasn't ready to really seek God. So it just really didn't make a whole lot of sense. But all I'll just say is this: once I went and did and got baptized, there was no fellowship afterwards. There was nobody like making sure I went to Bible study. There was nobody. Yeah, it was just like I just went to church when I wanted to go to church, and here I am saved. But I didn't feel that salvation. I didn't really feel saved, or that salvation. I still felt like, okay, like I didn't feel like this connection really to God. I didn't. Until I moved to Atlanta and kind of started seeking. So when I met his son's father, I hope I have enough storage to post this, because I really feel like God told me to send this. But anywho, I'm not going to worry about that. When I met his son's father, in that lonely place, you know, it was like, you know, when you're starving, I always like to describe it as this: it's like any old crackers will do. Now, he told me from the very get-go that he had a record. I mean, when I met him, he had just got out the pen 2 months prior after doing a 15-year bid. Okay. And in my mind, well, honey, when I saw him, I wasn't thinking about none of that. I just seen this jailhouse body in a wife beater at this Halloween party where all the girls were dressed up. All the dudes were downstairs shooting craps. And I went literally looking for the men. I'm like, where are all the niggas? Why are we about 3 years now, and I go down there and look. I couldn't even have got to pick the one that was the good gambler. He had just crapped out, and he was sitting over there with his wife beater over his shoulder, and I literally was like, never even do this. I'm like the type that I'm not like pursuing dudes. I'm like the type I'll look at you and smile and wait for you to come over. But no, I told him to come over, and he literally was looking around like, I'm like, yeah, you come over here. And the rest was history. He told me he was honest about what he did, and then in my mind I'm like, oh well, Malcolm X has been to prison. And then just me in general, I've just always been one to kind of like this is, I guess, the empath in me. Try to see the best in people. I realize now a lot of I've definitely have been trusting to a fault, and I realize now that I just shouldn't have given. There's some people that just don't deserve access to me or deserve that part of me. Like they have to earn. I realize now that just because somebody's had a hard time in life or what am I looking for? Where's the pot? Oh, put it over there. And then what on it? Just because somebody's had a hard time in life does not mean that I, it's not my place to try to save them, which is in my nature. Motherfucker, you need to be saving your damn self. That's what I've learned in throughout all of this. But that I've always kind of had that, in my nature to want to be the one to save people. Okay, where can I do this? Let me get back over here. So let's pause this. And first of all, let's see what this tastes like. I ain't tasted it enough. Let me see. Let's see what's happening here. He likes it really saucy. So let's see. Don't nobody like no dry ass spaghetti. Mm-hmm. And let me just say this. One of my other fears about dating, I remember when I was living in Atlanta, and now I know how I can say now, I used to be very insecure about, feeling like I couldn't cook. And that's just because, hold on. And that's really just because, again, it's a worthiness issue. And so, the idea of you have to learn you need to know how to cook in order to get a man was kind of playing in the background there. And in our culture, knowing how to cook means you know how to cook slave food or soul food and all of that, macaroni and cheese and I'll just say this. I do know, I can follow a recipe. I've made macaroni and cheese before. Matter of fact, I remember the one time I was so pressed on Valentine's Day. I know I'm going off on a tangent. I was so pressed on Valentine's Day over this dude who pretty much, this guy that I dated for, I don't know how long I dated him for, but was it a year? I don't even know if he made it a year. He was very clingy, but even then I was still people pleasing and trying to take care of him. Very much in my masculine, I'll say. I've always just been the one just to try to take care of the man. I always had more money than the man, and I guess that comes from just my upbringing again, being raised by a masculine energy woman who's a single mother, and just not really knowing how to be feminine, being my feminine and stuff. And so, but I remember trying to please this dude and trying to figure out, it was Valentine's Day and I wanted to make, learn how to cook him something. Well, I learned how to cook when I was in college. I'll say that. I'm a good cook. I could cook. I'm saying that here now, affirming that I can cook. But I remember at this point I didn't know how to make macaroni and cheese. And so I got this recipe that my mama had and wanted to make some pork chops. I remember it was pork chops, barbecue pork chops, mac and cheese, and I can't remember what the green vegetable was. It might have been green beans or something like that. I don't remember. And I remember, see, I should have started this at 1 o'clock. Well, at least it'll be ready by the time he come home. He didn't already had him made him some breakfast. And I remember going all out. I went and got this teddy, this little black teddy, and I remember cooking this food. I went out and bought me a Pyrex dish for my macaroni and cheese, and had did all of this cooking in this black teddy. And he would always, every time he got off work, or pretty much every day, he would come over my house. Why wasn't I ever going over his house? Huh. This is interesting. I don't remember. Oh, he had a roommate. That's what it was. He had a roommate. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so he would always come over, but the motherfucker came over every damn day. And that's a whole nother story. But, and I remember telling him when we were talking about, let me get my tones. I remember telling him when we were talking about what I wanted for Valentine's Day, and distinctively telling him, do not get me any perfume, because I only wear one scent, really, to this day, and it's an oil, a natural muscle, because I'm very sensitive to certain smells, and I'm just not a label person. I don't really like spending a whole lot of money on materialistic stuff. Now, I will spend thousands and thousands of dollars on investing in myself, personal development, this, that, and the other, and all of that. But like shopping, like I shop at Walmart. I'm not tripping about no brand names and none of that. But I did not want him to get me. I said, don't get me. Basically, just letting him know, okay, put some effort into it. And I remember buying him. I spent like $300 or $400 on him. I bought him this leather jacket, this big bomber jacket, and the outfit. And I remember my friend at the time was like, girl, you doing too much. You shouldn't be, like, I didn't know that that's not what I was supposed to be doing. Especially at the level where he hadn't even proven or shown to me. He hasn't shown or proven that he would do anything remotely like that. And what did he do? Here I am cooking and doing all this cooking, and well, I was cleaning my own house and fucking and making stuff in teddies and doing all of this and all of that. And what did he bring? Some stinking ass perfume and some chocolates. I was so pissed. And then what did he end up doing? So then after that, instead of me, I don't even think I really said anything. I mean, this was kind of close towards the end when I'm like, I am about done with this dude. So I remember, now I'm putting in the spaghetti. See, I forgot to grease this up. I hope it ain't, see, I'm off my game because I'm doing all of this content creator stuff. I really can't walk and chew gum at the same time, but we gonna work it out. Let's see. I hope I ain't too late. I usually try to add some oil to the sketty so it don't stick, and I forgot to put it in the water. That's my fault too. So now I'm just trying to add it. Now I'm trying to add it and mix it all in there. Woo! We don't want to do that. So here I am. I did all this, and then he was very low effort in giving me what I wanted, which is pretty much the theme of the men that I would date. Low effort men that would either abuse me verbally, emotionally, physically, in some way. And I just kind of learned that was all that I was worth. But the one thing I could say, I don't stick around too long. Usually my limit, I might give you a good 2 years. He got out of me. He didn't get that long. But once I realized, oh, okay, I give you chance after chance, and then once I'm done, I'm done. I am done. And so, now, what time is it?